Herod had John beheaded. John's disciples took his body and laid it in a tomb. Then they went and told Jesus. So Jesus and his disciples went by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many ran on foot ahead of them, so when Jesus landed, he saw a large crowd. The first time I saw him, I was about 18 years old. He came to the synagogue in Capernaum. It was the same synagogue where I'd done my bar mitzvah, and they had chosen the passage for me to read from the scriptures, Isaiah chapter 61. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, and he has appointed me to bring good news to the poor. And I asked them, who is this referring to? And they said, the Messiah, of course. And so for the next 5 years, every Sabbath I sat for 3 hours in the synagogue, listening to the experts in the law, picking legalistically over the scriptures. I reckon that every Sabbath I went home with at least one more command to obey. Once I tried to count them, and I reckoned I got up to about 260. And then he came to the synagogue. And would you believe he read the same passage? The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, and he has sent me to bring good news to the poor. Then he handed down the scriptures and sat down and said, this scripture is being fulfilled today in your presence. Well, the hubbub that arose after that, I thought they were going to throw him physically out of the synagogue and ban him forever. But I wanted to see more of him. But it was harvest time, and my father wouldn't give me time off. And then one day I was standing in the field just before lunchtime, and a stream of people started to run excitingly by, and I said, where are you going? And they said, the rabbi is about to come to the shore. And without asking permission, I jumped over the wall and joined them. When I got down to the lake, there was already a crowd, and I couldn't see over their heads, so I came back a few meters and stood on a rock, and then I saw the boat approaching. I counted 13 people in the boat. 12 of them were all excited and talking, but he was in the stern, and he looked dreadfully tired and sad. And I wondered why they didn't notice, why they didn't do something to comfort him. Then they came to shore and pushed through the crowd, and he came right up to the rock where I was standing, and he said, if you don't mind. And I stepped off the rock, and he sat down. And he motioned the people to sit down, and they sat down in the grass. It was about 2 o'clock, and he started preaching. I was spellbound. I'd never heard such words, beautiful words, wonderful words of life. He went on for over 2 hours. By about 4 o'clock, I became aware that I was really hungry. I'd skipped lunch. And I realized that he and his disciples appeared to be arguing about food. And he was saying, you give them something to eat, which was absurd. And then one of them brought a little boy, and I saw in his picnic basket 5 little loaves of bread and 2 fish. And then between the movement of the disciples, I saw his hands breaking the bread. And then baskets appeared, and I saw him putting bread and fish into the baskets. And then one of the baskets arrived in my circle, about 50 people. And I thought, there'll never be enough by the time it comes to me. But there was. And I took a piece of bread and a piece of fish and held them in my hand. And I thought, well, at least it's a little snack to get me through to supper. And I broke a bit of bread off and put it in my mouth. It was the nicest bread I'd ever tasted, with a lovely crust, and the interior was soft and fresh, as if it had just come out of the oven with a little smell of yeast. And I broke some more off and ate it. And I broke off a piece of fish, and it was delicious, smoked fish. And then I looked down in my hand and was surprised to see I almost had as much bread as when I'd started, and so I ate more and more. I never saw it grow or expand, and yet there was always more. And when I'd had enough, a basket came round for leftovers, and I put back what was still in my hand. And I swear that I put back as much as I'd taken out in the first place. And my hands felt strangely warm. And then it dawned on me. He had caused a miracle to take place in my hands. And I turned to look at him and was surprised to find his disciples were gone. But I've never seen a face so tired and so sad. He looked way over his 30 years. And then very quietly he said to those around him, "You need to go home now." And obediently people turned and went home. And as I was on my way home, I looked at my hands, still feeling warm. And I thought to myself, I wonder if in some way I could serve him with these hands. Well, soon after that he left the district. Some said he'd gone up to the area of Tyre and Sidon, and then eventually we believe he went down to Jerusalem. I never saw him in the flesh again. But he changed my life. And 50 years later, I'm still serving him.